Mood for the message today, Words for Meditation. Author Stephen Levine, who worked with the seriously ill, explored healing in his book, Healing into Life and Death. He and his wife noticed that many who seemed unable to heal met their illness with a, "I'm going to beat this." Most were at their illnesses, their tumors with a stick, self-flagellation, self-negation, me against me. Others, we noticed, were with their illness, touching it deeply, examining it, meeting it with tenderness and mercy. One man who worked with them said, "Completing our birth is the first stage of healing. If we do not allow ourselves to be born, to become fully aware, to attend to our life, then we will never be able to fully live or fully die."
Good morning. Well, my first thing is a request. My glasses broke, so if anybody has reader glasses, you can run up a pair. I can read my speech a little better. This talk today is, in a way, about, it's like putting bulbs on a Christmas tree and hoping that at the end, oh, thank you so much. I feel like I'm putting bulbs on a Christmas tree, and at the end, I hope it'll light up. We have very romantic ideas about healing. Perfect health, vibrant, we're alive. But perhaps a more workable definition would be health that is adequate for life. We hope we will be healed by medicine, surgery, lifestyle changes. But then there's an absolute insult to our intentions. We die. And strangely, death becomes the healer of a life that has become too biologically stressed to continue. But between birth and death, healing perhaps will become our greatest teacher. We will be humbled by our inability to avoid illness. We will be awestruck by moments of healing. We will have to surrender control and willpower, and we may experience gratitude, humility, and awe. So let's take a journey into the mysteries of healing. You know, Jesus' greatest command, he said, the greatest and only command was to love with all your heart, mind, soul, and body. So we're going to kind of look at that as we go along. I'm going to start out with 3 personal stories of illness and healing. Well, I had just moved to Hannibal, and it was 2004. And as you all know, when you move, you're just overworked to the nth degree. And so I kept on saying, oh, I just need a break. I just need a break. That was my hourly refrain as I'm unpacking. So anyway, I looked out the window one day and there was this feral cat under my van. And of course I thought it was starving to death. And I run out with food and I slip on the ice and fall and break, guess what? My hand. So I kind of limp back inside, call a neighbor to get to the hospital. And then I just get the whole picture and I sink to the floor laughing hysterically. I had gotten my break because it was my left hand, my dominant hand. I got 6 weeks off. So you'd think I would have learned something, but I didn't. So in the last year or so, I said, oh, I just want to sit and read. I was tired of my version of working, you know. I'm retired, but I work. And I said, oh, I just want to sit and read. And again, the to-do lists were always there. And then one day, over time, actually very gradually, I noticed my upper thighs getting weaker for some reason. And over more time, we're talking months, I thought my gait was getting a little gamey. It looked like I drank too much wine or something. And I finally ended up in a neurologist's office, and he said, you may have early Parkinson's or not. So I thought it was kind of funny, and I still do, because I get to sit and read more. And I thought, you know, I would have picked something else maybe, but you know, it's kind of like, be careful what you ask for. The healing lesson is, the last one I want to talk about is how we store trauma or not when something happens. So in this story, I'm driving to Chicago and then to Niagara Falls with an older woman. She's 70 years old. And she's a good driver. We've been together in Baltimore, Maryland at the time. And it was lunch, we'd eaten lunch, and we decided she would take a turn driving. It was pretty quiet on the road. And I kicked back to kind of take a nap. And then all of a sudden, what I didn't know about her was that she always took a nap after lunch. So you can guess what happens. We're going 70 miles an hour and she takes her nap too, and she's driving. So now, at the same time, in the back seat of the car, I brought along a toy violin, one of these electronic things. You take the strings and you touch it to the bow, and it makes a sound. It was like I had Bach on, or I guess it was Bach. Bum, 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 bum. Well, when the car started to flip and roll, violin started playing. So I'm upside down. It's going dun, bum, 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 bum. You're upside up again. Dun, 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 dun. And then when the song ended, we just smashed up against a tree at the very same moment. So of course the glass had flown in on me, the grass was all over me, you know, and I was taken out on a backboard and, you know, the whole thing to the emergency room. We're not even in our own town. And I'm laying on the metal, it seemed pretty cold to me. And I just keep thinking of that violin. So the way that the story could have gone into my brain would have been this trauma. This is a horrible thing that happened to me. And it might make me more anxious, no matter, you know, being around cars or this kind of thing. Or I could program in the violin and just see the humor and the awe and the amazement of the whole thing, the grass coming in on me and the glass and this violin playing in the background. So, and that long-term memory is the one that you're going to live with for maybe decades later. So those are my 3 stories about that. Thoughts are things, according to Prentice Mumford. He says, if thought was visible to the physical eye, we should see currents flowing to and from people. And you know, when people are really in love, you practically can see the things flowing between them. We should see that persons similar in temperament, character, and motive are in the same literal current of thought. We should see that a person in its despondent and angry mood is in the same current with others who are despondent and angry. He says, put a fear on a town or city or country of some deadly epidemic, and hundreds of the more sensitive, who may have had no fear, will be affected disagreeably. Say a fanatic predicts some great catastrophe. The sensational newspapers take it up, and thousands of people are affected by it. It's unpleasantly. Basically, what he's saying is thoughts contribute to health or disease. We can literally make ourselves sick. He wrote this in 1889. So if you can put fear on a city, according to him, can you put healing on a city? There's an interesting thought experiment I learned about years ago, and you can Google it and find it. It took place in Washington, D.C. in 1993. There was a group that wanted to pray for the city, and they wanted to see if they could reduce, in a significant way, violent crime. Well, the D.C. chief of police said, or the police said, he said, the only thing that would reduce violent crime in D.C. in the city would be 20 inches of snow. Anyway, a group starting out with 800 and ending up with 4,000 prayed for a reduction in violence from June 7th to July 30th, so almost 2 months. And the violent crime in the city was reduced by 23.3%. It's a fun act. It's good to Google these things. It's a really interesting story. So interestingly, if one were to read the New Testament purely from a Jesus as healer perspective, the results are startling. It seems like every time he was one-on-one with somebody, he was removing blockages to their spiritual awakening or awareness. It might be a physical block, it might be a mental block, it might be an emotional one, or it might be a spiritual block. And it's almost like he'd just look at them, analyze the situation, and give what was needed. Sometimes it'd be kind and sweet and wonderful, and sometimes it was like being hit over the head. That's why we see, I think, such different Jesuses, so to speak. So the first one is one of my favorites. It's the hemorrhaging women. I think being a woman, you relate to these things. And the way the Gospel of Mark tells the story is better than I could do it, so I'll use this direct quote. And there was a woman who had had a flow of blood for 12 years, and who had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus, and came up behind him in the crowd, and touched his garment. For she said, if I touch even his garments, I shall be made well. Immediately the hemorrhage ceased, and she felt in her body that she was healed. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone forth from him, immediately turned about in the crowd and said, who touched my garments? And fearful, she came forward and admitted she had done this. And he said, your faith has made you well, go in peace. Now this was the worst thing because she was unclean, so she couldn't go in the synagogue. The worst thing you could do would be to touch a rabbi, because you made any person you touched unclean. But her faith made her, whole in this situation. I had something I wanted to say about it, but I have to get to the right page and be able to read it. He removed the physical block to her healing. And I got to thinking, when we're in physical pain or we're struggling with illness, we have no time for thinking for what we would call our spiritual path or our spiritual journey. We're consumed with, so Jesus, and we see a lot of reports of physical healings. And I think it's because that's a really big, obvious roadblock. It's like ground zero. You've got to be able to have some reasonable health to pursue those inner moments or inner development of your soul and your sense of eternalness. So now he also looked at the emotional ones. Negative emotions such as anger and fear, they keep us stuck in unhealthy places. And if we have a toxic amount of a certain emotion, we get things like, chronic fatigue syndrome. I mean, we get different things, anxiety, ulcers, just different things go wrong with our body when we hold on to things too much. So he said, and sometimes it seems like, wow, if you're going to temple and you meet someone who's angered you, leave, fix it, reconcile. And then he would say, don't be anxious. Well, you can't grow one more hair on your head, but he said, don't be anxious, you're taken care of. There's a creator energy that's looking over you. You're not alone, we're all interconnected. The mental blockages, with the Sadducees and Pharisees, there's just so many experiences of that. You can't heal on the Sabbath, it's the law. You can't pluck grain and eat it on the Sabbath, it's the law. One day, a rich young man approached him and said he'd followed the Jewish law and all the rules. Was this enough? And here I quote from Mark, Jesus looking upon him loved him. And it's that love energy again. You lack one thing, go sell all that you have to the poor and follow me. At that saying, his countenance fell and he went away discouraged, for he had great possessions. Now, the more I think about this story, I think it wasn't the possessions that were the problem. Because somebody could be very wealthy and Jesus wouldn't be healing them because they had possessions. It was a problem for this particular person because he was very attached to his possessions. So again, it's this very individual one-on-one way of addressing things. So the last area, we've done physical, emotional, mental blocks. The last one is spiritual wholeness. And when I read this one, I think, you gotta be kidding me. But I've read this one before. If you love your father and your mother more than you love me, you are not worthy of being mine. If you love your son or your daughter more than me, you're not worthy of being mine. If you cling to your life, you will lose it. If you give it up for me, you will save it. So what's healthy about that? It seems sick. But he's talking about a mystical level of love, an encompassing love, one that does not judge, giving tribal preference to family and town and belief systems. When we heal on a physical, emotional, or mental level, I think the ego is still involved. That part of you is still engaged, it's healing and it's getting healthier, it's engaged. The spiritual one is ego-less. It's the world where mystics commune with the Creator. People who have near-death experiences seem to be catapulted into a mystical experience of this nature, and they never forget it, and it affects their lives. It transforms them, but they don't become mystics necessarily. We all have mystical experiences. We hold a beautiful new baby born, we see a sunset, we just hear music that really moves us. And those are our mystical moments. It's a taste. Then we get up and do the laundry and fix the Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner. But that's where Jesus lived, and that's where so we know it exists, and it's something that is part of our true health. So why do some people not be healed? There's two examples that come to mind. One is Paul himself, Apostle Paul. And he had this thing, he had some kind of physical disability, and he says, I had a thing with God. In 2 Corinthians, I was given a physical condition which has been a thorn in my flesh. 3 times I begged God to make me well again. So he's got faith, it's not, I believe, help my unbelief. This is a guy who's got total faith. And so he's having this mystical conversation, and God says, no. It turns out Paul has an issue with boasting, and the physical ailment will help to keep him humble. Then going to modern times, think of Stephen Hawking, who at an early age was diagnosed as Lou Gehrig's disease and was given 2 years to live. But he was in love and he wanted to get married and he had things he wanted to do. So he just basically ignored what he was being told. Again, mind versus mind as things. He ignored that. He had gotten married, he had 3 children, he lived until 76. And he realizes that what he wanted most was time to think about creation and cosmology. And I think he actually says this somewhere, or I read it. He said, this body was perfect for me to do what I loved. He needed time to think. So that was, we aren't always healed. And there might be a mystery in all of that. So where does this leave us with healing? It is indeed a mystery. In today's lingo, according to our modern sages, they pretty much point us in the same direction as what Jesus did. Love with all what you have of your body, your mind, your spirit. Just that is going to be the most cleansing and vibration and energy for you, for your own healing and for healing those around you. So just radiate as best you can. Love. And that is, for me, healing. I'm going to leave these classes here.